Thank you for joining us today for a report prior to Thanksgiving. I'm definitely glad to be back in Eastern North Carolina. It's been a long journey in Washington, D.C. Serving as the representative of North Carolina's 1st Congressional District continues to be an honor and a privilege, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to serve. Many challenges have marked our journey from the beginning of the 118th Congress, but we've navigated them with a focus on serving the best interest of the people of Eastern North Carolina. Just days ago, we averted a government shutdown, yet there remains global unrest. My priorities are clear. I also plan to touch base today on redistricting. My dear friend, Ms. Edith Warren, just a great Eastern North Carolinian. Avoiding a government shutdown is not only a political victory, it's a commitment to the well-being of the hardworking families of North Carolina's 1st Congressional District. It was about securing essential services for children attending Head Start. It was about securing essential services for children attending Head Starts. It was about securing essential services for children attending Head Start programs, securing senior programs such as Meals on Wheels, and guaranteeing that military families are able to continue to operate without undue financial strain, especially during the holidays like Thanksgiving, when individuals need help the most. I voted not just once, but twice now to avert a government shutdown. While I believe we must address the looming $33 million+ national debt, shutting down the government is not in anyone's best interest to get there. We did not take the Texas two-step, but we're taking what I'm sure Speaker Johnson would appreciate me calling the Louisiana two-step. We're going to pass, we passed a continuing resolution in a two-step approach that set provisions that will expire January the 19th for the first set of provisions. The second set of provisions will expire then on February the 2nd. This continuing resolution included a measure to extend the Farm Bill through the end of September 2024. This extension provides much-needed stability for the farmers of Eastern North Carolina, and I remind us that agriculture remains our top industry in the state. It also helped allow a seamless continuation of vital programs that our agriculture community rely on. And the additional time granted through this extension will allow the facilitation of a much-needed bipartisan negotiations to get to a good farm bill. As a United States House Armed Services Committee member and the vice-ranking member of the Readiness Subcommittee, I believe Israel must have the right to self-defend itself. A nation must respond when terrorists slaughter families, rape women, shoot down young people, attending a music festival, behead, burn others to death, shoot individuals fleeing in their vehicles, pulling senior citizens out of wheelchairs to take them hostage, and even young babies. My heart and prayers continue to go out to everyone that's been affected by this, loved ones who are still waiting to see perhaps a family member that's still held hostage. I've called for and will continue to call for the release of all hostages right now, and I fully support the compliance of the international laws that often govern humane conduct of war. I also emphasize the importance of standing strong against Putin's aggressive actions. We cannot allow him to succeed in undermining the sovereignty of Ukraine. His actions threaten the security of the Ukrainian people and challenge the foundations of international stability. We must unite against Putin's attempts to exert control through force. And I believe it's always a good investment when about 3% of the Department of Defense's budget in supporting Ukraine has resulted in dismantling nearly 40% of Putin's military capacity. We must continue working to counter these threats. We must send a clear and unwavering message. We will not allow Putin to achieve his objectives at the expense of global security. Again, these are not just an attack on Israel or Ukraine, but it's an attack on democracy. And that's why we must be concerned about it here in eastern North Carolina. And I remind you, a threat to democracy in any part of the world is a threat to eastern North Carolina and democracy right here at home in the United States of America. We must continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel and Ukraine and ensure that they have the resources and support to defend themselves. I'm glad to see President Biden meet with President Xi Jinping in San Francisco. As a House Armed Services Committee member, it is good to hear that top military leaders of the United States and China will begin to communicate again. I wholeheartedly support President Biden's request for assistance to combat illicit fentanyl. That is why I introduced bipartisan legislation, the Modern Authentication in Pharmaceuticals, the MAP Act of 2023, to secure the United States pharmaceutical supply chain and close vulnerabilities that allow counterfeit controlled substances, including lethal fentanyl, to enter the marketplace. Likewise, I fully support efforts to stop the entry of illegal drugs into our country at the southern border. And you remember we went to the southern border earlier this year, and that was the importance to really look and examine what's taking place at the border. My top priorities include protecting jobs in eastern North Carolina and tackling inflation. With Medicaid expansion prepared to take effect December the 1st, just a few days away, I look forward to the build-up eventually as we stand up the program, bringing what we anticipate nearly 3,000 new jobs into the East. At the same time, if the administration implements a ban on menthol, then it could possibly threaten 6,000 jobs right here in North Carolina. That's why I sent a letter to President Biden expressing concern about the Food and Drug Administration's proposed rule to ban menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars and its impact on working families and farmers in North Carolina. Meanwhile, I'm seeking clarity on why North Carolina was left out of the administration's plan to build chip hubs across the country. I believe there remains opportunity for biotech in the East and strengthening apprenticeship programs. High costs and inflation remain a major issue for men. High cost and inflation remains a major issue for many families in eastern North Carolina. It's the basics: child care, food, medications, and paying the bills. Many families are struggling to stretch the dollars, and it's frustrating. I know and I get it. People are working extremely hard, and at this time of the year, perhaps feeling at their wits' end. We saw it over the last week in D.C. We went from a kidney punch to a challenge to fight in the open committee meeting to name calling. I'm understanding that we're going back to the Smurfs, and who knows if Gargamel's coming back in Washington D.C. But with all that taking place, I want the people here in eastern North Carolina to know that my focus remains on better public policies that are going to help our families. We must maintain our commitment to affordable health care, look over the long term at increasing our housing supply, and expand our labor force, addressing worker shortages. That's why I've served as a co-chair on the Agriculture Labor Working Group, where we recently released an interim report on the activities of the working group and the issues identified from a series of roundtables conducted over the past 4 months regarding our H-2A program. Other priorities moving ahead will include passing a bipartisan common sense farm bill, passing the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, which includes many provisions that are going to impact us right here in eastern North Carolina that we fought for, such as provisions to make sure that we protect the F-15s at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. Such as provisions passing the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, which includes many provisions that are important to us right here in eastern North Carolina, such as supporting Seymour Johnson Air Force Base and protecting the F-15s, as well as a provision that we have fought for that will help expand the military operations even at the Global Transport, which is a regional economic hub. Passing annual bipartisan appropriation bills to include funding the Camp Lejeune water contamination survivors. That's going to be really important. Guaranteed security assistance for Israel and Ukraine, securing our border, and providing more support for the Southeast Crescent Regional Commission to provide economic development. All of these priorities further the long-term development and well-being of eastern North Carolina. Now, let's talk about redistricting. Let's delve into the significance of the newly proposed congressional maps. My priority remains addressing the people's concerns in rural North Carolina, regardless of the district configuration. I work equally as hard for Republicans as I do Democrats and independents. I am disappointed. Pitt County will no longer be in the 1st Congressional District. Pitt County is that bright and shining star that so many Pitt County is that bright and shining star that so many rural counties depend on. They depend on Pitt County for health care, for education, for economic purposes, jobs, and so many people from surrounding rural communities come in and out of the county every single day. And I will miss serving Pitt County, but let me be clear, we have another year of this fight, and we'll continue to fight every single day tooth and nail for the residents of Pitt County until we move into a newly transfigured congressional district. As a U.S. Air Force veteran, I am particularly delighted to welcome Wayne County and Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in this new district. Additionally, the incorporation of Lenoir County in the Global Transport underscores the importance of economic development and infrastructure in our region. I've represented Wayne and Lenoir counties in the state Senate, so I will not be a stranger to these communities and look forward to continue the work that we're taking on in Washington, D.C. For these counties. A new map also presents an opportunity to enhance representation in Currituck, Camden, and even as a portion of Granville County. So I'm looking forward to continue to do the work for the East and doing everything to help make sure the residents, their voices are heard in this process and that we're fighting every single day for a better life. My heart is heavy as we return back to the East for Thanksgiving. It's important that we pause to honor the memory of my former colleague and State Representative Edith Warren, who passed away. Miss Edith's journey was similar to mine. It started working out farming tobacco. Hers started in Edgecombe County. She shattered glass ceilings, becoming the first woman in a full-time capacity to serve as a principal in the Pitt County school system, the first woman elected as a Pitt County commissioner, the first woman to represent North Carolina House District 8. I had the privilege of working alongside Miss Edith in her 14-year tenure in the North Carolina House of Representatives. Further solidifies her legacy through so many different initiatives, and in particularly when we think about East Carolina, our Heart Institute, the dental school. She was very instrumental in delivering those for Eastern North Carolina. And I would even highlight here, I've spoken to Miss Edith so many times while being in the U.S. House and over the years, and she was indeed a beneficiary of the ECU Heart Institute. And she was very proud of the work, and to all of the healthcare professionals there, I can definitely tell you, you had a very proud person in Miss Edith, and she was really just always super proud of the teams that were providing care for our families. She was a champion for Eastern North Carolina, a champion for education, and a champion, yes, for ECU. Go Pirates. Miss Edith's legacy will live through her extraordinary contributions to our region. I was honored to share comments on the House floor to make certain that her accomplishments, her legacy, were recorded in the correct congressional record to become a part of not only Eastern North Carolina's history, but also our nation's history. Lastly, we must always count our blessings. I'm grateful for this opportunity to serve the families of Eastern North Carolina, and I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Would love to answer your questions.
To vote on not the government shutdown. Talk a little bit about how you were able to, how does that make you feel that you guys are moving forward now?
It's important to keep the government up and running for the people of Eastern North Carolina, our state, and beyond, because to allow the government to shut down, it would have a tremendous impact on people. I get it. We need to look at how we can tackle the national debt, over $33 trillion. You know, that's huge and significant. But we couldn't, in my opinion, do that at the expense of the impact of a government shutdown.
Question I also had for you, I mentioned a while ago. Let me just pull this up real quick. Don, do you think that George Santos should be kicked out of the House right now?
The question became before us. It was dealing with the removal of Representative Santos. And when the question came before us, I voted present. And I want to be clear, that vote was guided by, I felt there needed to be more due process. I couldn't rely on reports that I was hearing over the course of time in the media, but I wanted to move towards him having due process, allowing the facts to be examined, and that's why we also have a House Ethics Committee. And House Ethics, they've now released a report, a pretty scathing report, that substantiates, many concerns, and that report now will be delivered to the Department of Justice for action. So I will take great note of the report itself, and at this point in time, I would definitely tell you I have great concerns about his continued service in the United States House of Representatives.
And what is it going to take to stop having to vote against these government shutdowns? Like, is it going to take just people working together? Like, what is it going to take so we don't have to keep going through this process?
What is going to stop? What is going to take to stop going through government shutdowns? I believe, first and foremost, we have to bring civility back into this process. There was a prelude to the government shutdown in this case. For the first time in American history, we actually vacated a speaker. And I showed up. I was so excited after receiving the support of people of Eastern North Carolina to go to Washington, D.C. And keep in mind, it's fairly tradition and customary. We would go with our families for a very standard swearing-in ceremony. 4 days later, 15 rounds of voting later, and that was how we started. A lot of bickering and not necessarily, getting along, and that continued, throughout the 118th, which led to then the vacation of the speaker. And obviously, we spent the first few weeks of a 45-day stopgap that was put in place just to put another speaker in place. So we have to look at ways to bring civility back to this process, to restore hope, for the American people, that we can go to Washington, D.C. and work on their behalves and put their priorities at the top. And, it says a lot. It says a lot. People obviously are taking notes, and, we're up there ready to fight each other. It's not a surprise that the rating of Congress is around 13% or so. We have an obligation and responsibility to remember our oaths of office, to work every day for the people, to uphold our Constitution.
Can you talk about the importance of the Farm Bill?
Oh, the Farm Bill is huge, and most importantly, right now, it was incredible that we were able to get an extension in the continuing resolution that would, push out the Farm Bill for another year at the end of September 2024. So many farmers rely on this. I've made my way around the East and across all 19 counties in this current district, and I've heard concern about making sure we're protecting crop insurance, having to deal with high costs and inflation, interest in making adjustments with reference pricing, just so many concerns that farmers have shown. And not only that, when we think about the Farm Bill, it's massive. We're talking about broadband. We're talking about housing. There's so many components to a Farm Bill. We're talking about assistance for fire departments. So it's huge, and it's so important that we get it right. We set this policy in place once every 5 years. We're talking upward to a little over $500 billion associated with the Farm Bill alone, and we have to get this right.